in this online meeting where we will be talking about virtual field visits, how to create them, and how students are learning through virtual field trips. Virtual field trips made possible by the use of media. We have three very distinguished speakers this afternoon. First of all, we have Matthew Wilson from the University of Leeds. We have Pim van Schöll from the Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands. And last but not least is Dr. Trevor Collins from the Knowledge Media Institute of the Open University in the UK. We're talking about virtual field trips. Virtual field trips is a bit of a broad concept. What we're going to talk about this afternoon is three cases which are slightly different from each other, as you will learn throughout the webinar, which range from pre-recorded to interactive to, in fact, really live and interactive. It's a bit of a broad range between them. And we're going to see how in these three cases we're using media to make it possible. Without much further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker from the University of Leeds, and that is Matthew Wilson. He's the digital production lead of the University of Leeds. He has a very extensive background in production, post-production, everything from camera and lighting to pre-production, post-production, animation, motion graphics, streaming, live streaming, 360 degrees, and virtual reality. And he has started working with traditional filming and drone operation with 360 video and photography to develop virtual reality experiences. So Matt, please explain us how you are working, especially with the academic staff, in creating this case, this special case that you have produced, the Ilkley More virtual field trip. Please, Matt, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll just share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that okay. So yes, yep, I worked on the Ilkley More virtual field trip. I did a lot of most of the videography and photography for it, but this time I also built the learning experience as well. But before I dive in on the Ilkley More trip, I'd just like to briefly mention what came before it. So we made a previous virtual field trip on the Jurassic Coast, which was all about using LiDAR to assess geohazards and how cliffs were receding and things like this. And I just want to point out this quote. I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but the staff that organize normal field trips recognize the value in making digital experiences, and particularly for proprietary exercises, post-trip debriefs, and actual full replacement trips. So the Jurassic Coast trip was a replacement trip, so the students didn't go out that year. However, the Ilkley More trip is slightly different in that the students did go out to the field, and the Ilkley More trip is like a post-in-person, almost like a revision tool for them to revisit the site. So I shall move on to the student feedback we got from the first trip, which was, we asked them I think it was favorite element, and LiDAR was big on there because the whole trip was about the LiDAR data they were capturing in the field. But also what stood out to me was VR footage and drones. So they obviously appreciated all the great stuff we got there. And we also asked them to describe the experience in one word, and the big one was great and useful, interesting. So all very positive. So a bit about the pre-build process of what we did before we actually started capturing any multimedia was I met with Dr. Ryan Cromer, who was the academic lead, and we spoke about what he normally does in the field, and he shared images with me of important areas, and we looked at Google Maps together to kind of highlight where we would need to go, where we'd need to take video, where he would like us to do drone flying, and all the different things like that. And after a bit of development and discussion, and him helping me understand the pedagogy bit and what would aid the learners the most, we kind of came together, made a plan, and then there was quite a bit of drone flight planning to do, which I'll touch on later. General logistics of being out in the field, such as risk assessment as well. And but once we got all that together, we kind of decided what we'd have in the final resource, and this is kind of a list of what was in there. So 6 360 videos, which were a mixture of a static shot where Ryan would be stood in frame, like you can see in this picture here, and then somewhere he actually held a camera and took the students on a little tour, pointing things out as he moved along. The final thing had 12 drone flights, 12 traditional, what we started calling 2D videos now, and some what they're called strength test locations, where they test the strength of rocks. Students, when they're in the field, have to do compass measurements, and in our resource, we kind of just had to give them that information. There was no way for them to do that in the resource, sadly. And then a few pop-up things and an interactive map, which I can hopefully show you at the end. But the main build consisted of over 130 360 still images that are kind of the scenes that students can go between. And one core thing we wanted to do on this project compared to the previous one was we didn't want it to be as a linear experience. So the previous one kind of had a single direction that the students would travel in, whereas this one, whenever there was a junction in a path, for example, we tried to give them the option to go down that way. And also at certain points have access to the interactive map, which they could then use to get around. I should probably point out that what the students do when they're in the field is they're looking at the environment, and the idea is that there's a hypothetical road being built across Ilkley Moor, which I'll show you a map of. And the idea is that there was a hypothetical road, and the students had to assess how they could build that. Would it be safe? How the geology would impact that. And this image here is actually the blueprint for the final tour, which was a collaboration between myself and Dr. Ryan Cromer. But I know it looks just a bit crazy, but the blue circles are 360 images. The numbered arrows were additional 360 images we collected. You can see the little kind of hammer symbol for the strength test locations, and there's a few other bits and pieces on there which I kind of used whilst I was putting the final resource together. It made sense to me anyway, so I'm not sure it would to anybody else. So why did we use 360 for this particular project? And the main reasons were the immersion for the students, so they could experience the physical surroundings without having to actually go back out to the field. It was to make it feel interactive, so we could add elements that they could click on and move between, but then we could also include our normal multimedia and drone flight videos and things like that. It also gives the students freedom to explore the areas they might not have reached when they were out in the field, and it's kind of that discovery aspect, and the opportunity to join Ryan as he kind of takes people on little tours and things. And logistically, so I was reminded yesterday, actually, that the whole project from start to finish took 3 to 4 weeks. So from us being approached with, can you do this, to us saying, let's see, and then finally, yeah, let's get on with it and deliver it. So 3 to 4 weeks in total to get it out, which I think is just incredible, really. It was quite hard work, but we got there. So to make the resource, there was 3 individual trips out to the moor. So one day was initially just going to be a recce. Myself and Dr. Suzanne Bickerdijk went out together to see how feasible it was to do drone flights and take the 360 images and this type of thing. And actually, most of the 360 images that are in the final virtual field trip were taken on that recce day. And then the second day, I was in the field with some colleagues. So there was myself, another production lead, 2 learning technologists, and we were with Ryan. And we went out to collect some more videos, pieces to camera, anything that Ryan wasn't actually in, he was there for that day. And that was the only day we had with him in the field. So we had to try and get absolutely everything. Which actually meant we split into 2 teams at one point because it was raining all the time. So we kind of kept running out of time to actually film things and having to shelter the cameras and hide. But we split into 2 teams so that 2 team members could go with Ryan and collect a few more pieces to camera and let him walk around with the 360 camera. And then myself and my colleague Nathan went and did some more drone flying. And then the third day was just additional picking up more images and more drone flights, because we kind of worked out which gaps we had after being in the field with Ryan. So a little bit about the equipment. We had an Instapro 2, which is a quite good 360 camera that can do 8K video and photography. It's got a really useful app so that you can just use the app to operate it. We had a 360 GoPro Max, which is a lot smaller, which is the one that Ryan would hold as he walked around. For our normal kind of traditional style videos, we had two DSLR style cameras, the Sony a7 III and a Sony FX3. And we found the smallest tripods we owned because we knew we'd be carrying all this gear, and it's quite a large area, as you probably could tell from the map. And in fact, the heaviest item we had on the day was a massive battery bank, which I was lugging around in a rucksack. And then the drone we used for this project was the DJI Mini, which we'd only recently got before this project. And we used a DJI microphone. And the reason we took that microphone is because I'd previously used those with Dr. Ryan Cromer, and he would operate it himself quite confidently, which was great. Usually when I do any video work, it involves a lot of scripting and a lot of understanding things before going out into the field. However, from working with Ryan previously, I was quite confident that he could just deliver anything that he needed to the camera as he would to the students if he was out there with them. So that cut down some pre-production time, but it meant that we just had to trust that, that everything was going to be fine on the day and that it would work. And thankfully, it all did. But you can't plan for everything. There's a nice picture of Ryan looking nice and wet. It does rain a lot in Yorkshire. So we had lots of bad weather. There was a lot of hiking up and down the hills, carrying all the gear. We actually had an issue with the what's supposed to be a really good 360 camera, really expensive piece of kit, and it just wouldn't turn on at certain moments, and we had to plug it into the battery bank for half an hour and turn it on again, even though it had full battery. Just things that can happen in the field, you know. You can't really plan for that. But yeah, there was time constraints whilst we were out there to do with the weather, and this time of year it gets dark early, so it couldn't be out there too late. And we just had a lot to do in each day. It was very tiring. Drone flights. So I've been doing drone flights for various projects over the last, say, 5 to 6 years now. And they just take a lot of planning. You have to get landowner permission, for example. So Bradford City Council is the landowner here, so we had to get permission from them to fly there. And there was a big worry about ground nesting birds, and our filming period could have been in the time that they would be doing that, and we just wouldn't have been allowed to fly if that was the case. But fortunately, they allowed us to go up. At the University of Leeds, we have to submit an application to the health and safety team with all the information, and then once they say that's fine, we then have to get the permission from council, and then finally it all comes together and we're allowed to do it. And that's pretty much everything on there. Yeah, so this image is kind of a zoomed in part of what you saw earlier, but specifically for what we do for drone flights. You have to actually plan the exact path of the drone that you want to fly. However, I will tell you that once you're in the air and it's safe to do so, you can kind of go off that path and make sure you're actually photographing or filming the things you want, as opposed to just what's potentially along this trail. But you have to consider things such as emergency landing points and all things like that. And as long as you've got that in place, then you're safe to fly. And the sort of things we were getting with the drone was things that students would never be able to see themselves, even if they were in the field. So there's a nice rocky outcrop in the top left image there that can only be viewed from this angle with a drone. The top right image is a muddy outcrop, which was an important part of the would it be okay to build a road here, part of what the students were out there observing. The bottom left there is kind of what the drone flights look like within the resource, and that's a quarry, which is another important site of the field trip. And then bottom right there, they call this Rocky Valley, and I'd never understood how to spot where a landslide had been or anything like that, but after looking at this drone footage, I was like, wow, you can really see how the cliffs have fallen away, and now there's a path between the old bit of cliff and where the cliff sits now. and you can see how all the stone has tumbled down the hill, and even on the ground you couldn't really see that, so this was quite useful. This was the second trip. There was quite a few lessons learned from the first one that I kind of tried to just implement from the beginning when working on this one. And a big one was having an intro video at the start of the resource, just to explain the resource to the students, how they're expected to use it, and a bit of technical things and what to look out for. Tried to add some more accessibility to this project. So in the image on the side there, you can just see like an exclamation mark and a circle. What I tried to do is anytime there was something to interact with in a scene, that would pop up. And so the students would know there was something there they could click on and have a look at. And also if there was more than one route they could take, then a symbol to allow, just so they knew that, oh, I can actually go 2 ways here. A big lesson learned was building for a headset first, because previously we made this in Scenario VR. I was building the project. I wanted to have this little heads-up display at the bottom, and it all looked great in a web browser, but as soon as I took it into a headset, all that stuff vanished, and if you tried to look down and find it, it'd keep moving away from you, and you couldn't actually, it just kept trying to get away, which was obviously not a great user experience. And a big thing we did was add jump off points, so that if a student was watching a video, they could click and exit out of that video. They didn't have to, if they'd maybe already watched it and didn't want to rewatch it, maybe they've accidentally gone back on it and they didn't want to sit there and wait for it to finish again, they could leave the video. And similarly to that, with the 360 videos where Ryan takes them on a little walk, when that video finishes, they have the option to either go back to where the walk started, or they could leave where the walk ended and then carry on their journey, as opposed to always having to go back and then click through where they'd just seen. So I thought that was quite a good lesson learned from the previous trip that worked quite well. Did have some build issues when I was creating this project though, which if anybody's used Scenario VR, they might be familiar with the folders and group structure, which can get quite complicated, especially when I tried to make this interactive map. A big issue with that was every time I copied the map to use it in a different scene, every single link I'd made using the icons to take you to a different part of the trip would just break, and I'd have to manually redo them all, and everything I'd put on the map would become unaligned, even though it was all grouped and in these folders and things. It just changed every time I pasted it in, which was a bit of a nightmare. And also, nowhere within Scenario VR does it tell you this, but projects have a size limit. So there's no way of knowing if you've gone over it until you try to publish and it just doesn't work. So I had a quite hectic evening before the final launch of the project, where I realized it wouldn't work and had to compress every single image and video by half and then add them back in and replace them and just hope that it would work, and then keep crushing them down until it does. So it was great taking an 8K camera out and doing really fantastic imagery, but then had to squash it all down so that it could be published, which was a bit sad, really. A bit of the feedback that we've had from this trip is a student said, always wish someone would do something like this to recreate the field trips virtually, and you have done that excellently, absolutely brilliant. And another student said, usually the other virtual resources were nothing but a combination of pictures, which made it hard to put 2 and 2 together, but this virtual resource solves that and works absolutely brilliantly. And we couldn't really ask for much more of that, much more than that. So that was great feedback. If I've got time, I can show you the build quickly. Yeah, great. So this is where the students, can you see that? Is that showing up? Yeah. This is where the students enter the field trip. At the bottom here are the symbols I mentioned. So there's the one that says something to interact with, or that there's multiple routes. So they can go this way up to the cliffs. They can actually go into this bathhouse. They can go down to a tarn where the road would be built. And then the interactivity here is this video, but I'm not going to play that. But I will show you the map. So this is the map I built. So the students can see where this is the hypothetical road. This is where they can go see compass measurements, the strength test videos, the drone flights, and the 360 videos. And then these can all be toggled back off. And then students can use these icons here to actually go to different areas instead of walking the paths. So hopefully that's going to load. There we are. So this one takes you down into this quarry, where again, this is the strength test video where
We're going to do
Dr.
a
Ryan
field
Cromer
test
hits a
of
rock.
the east side of the quarry. Here's my geological hammer.
So there we are. That's the sort of thing that the students would look at. We have these question prompts to make the students have a bit of a think about what's important about these areas. And then we've got the drone footage so they can see it all from a completely different angle. I'll share a link afterwards where you'll be able to look at this content a bit more closely. Maybe one other location to visit would be, let's go to here. So going up to the top of the cliffs, and just to show you one of the videos where Ryan took the students on a little walk and go into these woods. And here we go, got this 360 video. Oh, that's one feature I added, was that the video doesn't just start playing. If you click on it, it opens, and then the student chooses to then play it so that they can prepare.
We're here on the west side of Ilkley Moor.
So I don't think you can hear this, but Ryan's talking about the location.
This landslide feature.
And he's showing that these trees are all leaning, and that's evidence of landslide.
At several times in the past. So if you look closely, a lot of the trees in this area.
Yeah, so that's the kind of content that's in there. I think I'll stop sharing for now. If I can work out how to do that. I don't know, maybe someone can do that for me. Thank you. I guess one thing to mention is that videos do look compressed, especially the 360 moving videos, and that was just an issue with using the tool we chose. Hopefully there was some useful information there, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
It's fantastic. It's a beautiful experience. I had the pleasure of looking further into it, so I know how spectacular some of these things are. So brilliant. I see there's a few questions already for you, Matt. Maybe I can tell them for you. There's first of all Dominic Bates, who is saying that it's interesting to see the wide combination of a variety of different media sources there. And I would like to attach my question to that. How exceptional is it that one person, because you look like a very small team, one person of very few people in your team can manage all these different technologies, from drone operation, 2D, 3D, 360. So is that an exceptional team that you have there?
I mean, we do have an exceptional team. Of course, I'm going to say that, but I mean, I had to do a bit of research into using 360 and filming with 360 on the previous project. So before we went down to the Jurassic Coast to do the first project, I just got my hands on a camera and just did some testing and worked that out so that when we were in the field, we could just kind of get on with it. And similarly with the drone recording, I had experience doing that, and that's why I was able to do that. And then my background is just in traditional filming, so I essentially already had the required skills just to get on with it, which is why we managed to do it with such a small team. But when we went to the Jurassic Coast, my colleague Blenner, a learning technologist, came with me to assist me so that we could have maybe multiple cameras running, or we could split the jobs between us, such as, okay, I'll go do some filming whilst you go collect 360 images along this beach, for example. And that was one way to manage that. I did do all of the post-production on both virtual field trips in terms of video editing and still image editing, and I was just given the time whilst the project was happening just to get on with that and get it out the door, essentially. So does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, and all that in 4 or 5 weeks. You said that it was complete production from pre-production to delivery, 4 or 5 weeks altogether.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I think everybody's impressed with that. Then Peter Dekkers from University Zuid in the Netherlands, he's asking, can you explain how you create jump-off points? in the video? Is that a feature of the player, or is that something that's programmable?
So if I show my screen again, actually, this is a good time to do that. So unfortunately, Scenario VR doesn't actually have a media player within it. So you just drag a video in and it's just a floating object. So I actually built the media player and then used it in all the various scenes to keep it consistent from scratch. So it essentially consists of a grouped box but a 360 video is classed as a scene. So 360 images and 360 videos are scenes, as opposed to being just a video that's played. And essentially, for each button, you get various controls in Scenario VR. So the play will link to a scene, and then you can say which scene and say which direction the user would be facing. Let's just go back off that one. Let's see. The jump off one might be this one. But as an example, you just have to give it a bunch of instructions. So you say, okay, at the end, once the video is finished playing, this icon pops up, and then the student press that icon, which will either take them back to the start, or it'll take them to the next 360 still image, which will roughly be where the video ended. And that's how I kind of approach that. Hopefully that answers the question.
Peter, if it doesn't answer your question, please be free to add in the chat your further questions, and Matt will follow up. Another question from André Roosendaal. Great project, looks actually quite useful in the browser as well. Do some students use that instead of using a VR headset?
Yes, so the browser version was available to all students to access in their own time whenever they needed it, once they'd been on the trip. And then we actually ran specific sessions for them to come in and try it on a headset. So we have a space at the University of Leeds called the Helix, which is we've got a couple of studios there, and we've got an OmniDeck VR platform and all this sort of stuff. And this project is preloaded onto all of the available headsets that students can come in and use. So they're able to just put it on and have a go. So yes, so students did come and do that. There was one particular session ran by Dr. Ryan Cromer where he asked them to specifically come and do that, and that's when they mainly did it. But there were some students that asked to use them again afterwards. But yeah, they mainly used the browser version combined with other packages and things that Dr. Ryan Cromer had alongside this.
Mm-hmm. And one question about the evaluation. You did some qualitative evaluation. We see that from the comments of the students mainly. But what was for Dr. Ryan Cromer the learning effect? There's a bit of debate whether immersion is really good for learning. There's a lot of immersion in this. That's one of the main qualities of it. What was his feedback, or how did he assess the learning efficiency of this virtual tour?
Yes, so mainly through the form of a questionnaire and online form, we got feedback from the students. And in fact, the link in the chat there to the Vimeo actually goes into quite a bit more depth about the student feedback and what they liked and disliked. I was kind of a bit detached from that part of it, but yeah, I think it was mainly through the form of questionnaires and things like that they found out, and generally it was positive, and students said they appreciated it, and especially being able to revisit things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, but you don't know whether there was also a pedagogical evaluation of the learning effectiveness. Did the students, they like it, yes, but did they learn also? Do you know?
Oh, okay. I understand that they did, and yeah, they had to use it to complete their assessments and things. So yeah, and it worked for them, is my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think we can come back at the end for some further discussion, because we don't want to use all the time. There are some more questions for you in the chat, but we will definitely make sure that they are answered, and that we also distribute the answers to everybody who's participating. Because we have another interesting case, and I want to go to that. Thank you very much, Matt. It's very impressive. But the next one is also not bad. That's the Jordan Valley tour, presented by Pim van Schöll. He's from the Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands. He's instructional designer, educational media from the Educational Media Teaching and Learning Center at this university. Pim, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Impressive presentation, Matt. It looks amazing. Thank you all for joining. I think you will disappear as soon as I start sharing my screen, so I have a final look at you guys to know that I'm not speaking into thin air. I'm going to show you a presentation that I gave previously together with Alex Bolding. He's the main teacher in this course, and I got an opportunity to work with him as an instructional designer from the educational media team, because this virtual tour that I'm going to show you is part of a way bigger thing, because Alex was also working on redesigning his entire course. So there were different teams within our teaching and learning center involved in this project. So there was the Brightspace course, the team with technologies, and we as video department got invited at some point because Alex wanted to recreate a field trip. And he did something like this before with videos and interviews with experts, but he now really wanted that extra engagement. He shot videos before when he visited Jordan, or he's been to Morocco, India, and now he wanted to involve us, or at least our team. So as instructional designer, I have never picked up a camera to shoot something. We have 5 media specialists in our team who are excellent at doing this. Alex was doing a lot of pre-work before we went to Jordan, because that was where this thing goes all about. And I think the 3rd or the 4th session, he said, I want a camera guy with me. So Remco joined him. He was part of that small team going over there. We shot a lot of high quality videos, and afterwards we ended up with a lot of materials that we had to shape into that virtual tour. So that's what I will be talking about. What did we create? And what are some of the lessons learned, and how did we try to structure this? The title, Co-Creation of Online Living Laboratory for Water Management Design Course. So the topic is water management. We are taken into the Jordan Valley, where water is a scarce resource. And within this course, Alex tries to, students are given a challenge to solve one of the challenges, actually in collaboration with those stakeholders. But one person who can explain this better than me is Ayoub. So I'm going to show you a video, and Ayoub is the teaching assistant during this course. He also visited Jordan, and he will show you a bit of the tour and how this came to be. Remind me, did you already hear the sound, or did I forget to share it with sound? Thanks.
Being out in the field, learning on the go, and exploring your own path as you go. Student field trips are an important tool for us in Wageningen University. However, you can't always visit locations with 20 students. We wanted to reach the field trip engagement in our case study area, and on top of that, let students pick their own path through this case study so they can engage with the stories of our stakeholders in the field. One way of doing this is by having problem owners, called commissioners, bringing a design challenge which has to be addressed interactively by the students. The Jordan Valley case study is a virtual map of the Jordan Valley area. The map contains information about the stakeholders and the infrastructure and actual water-related challenges farmers and government face. The case study is not a standalone. It is part of the Living Lab, a collaboration between Wageningen University and stakeholders in the Jordan Valley. It is created for master students following the International Land and Water Management Program. Let's take a look at the pumping station in the southern Jordan Valley. Students can choose: first, discover the infrastructure by themselves, in 360, or with the video with stakeholder Anwar, who appears multiple times in the course. We will literally zoom in to the area to emphasize the location.
This is here King Abdullah Canal. There is the outlet of the canal, which is bring water through a conveyance line to this area. Here is the trash rack, which clean the physical trashes from the water, and then bring it to the settlement pond or tank. Then we have another.
On a different part of the map, you can find videos that introduce you to the stakeholders and the challenges they face.
All right, I want to pause it right there. The entire video I will share in the, or Dovi will share in the chat. You will also see some remarks from students, what they thought about it and how they experienced it. This is part of the presentation. So a brief demo, I showed you a bit of the map. I will explain the didactic concept, a bit of the process, and some lessons learned. And a bit, how do you do this? How do you make this living case with those actual people in Jordan who have real problems? How do you translate this into a map? Because if people go into the field, that's not structured. They have to talk to people. And how do you make sure that you capture this without telling them where to go? That's how I rephrased this question for our media team. And we solved that with that map. So these are the slides of Alex, but I will briefly summarize why add a living lab to a design course? Because he wants to make sure that people actually learn the design skills for the real life situation and not make this controlled context. So he needed an active case with active problem owners. Ayub mentioned the commissioners. We had actual people having those problems, but they were in Jordan. So that's why we needed that virtual map to help and decolonize the way we teach science. So Alex was really keen on not being that white guy explaining how problems in Jordan should be solved while the farmers there were having the real problem. So he wanted to have that as close as possible to real life, because that's what people will do when they work in water design management. They will have to talk to real people and not believe what others who visited have said. This is a bit of his course logic. I don't want to go too much in detail, but what I want to emphasize is the 2 blocks. So the first 3 weeks, students are having a bit of a self-study period. So they become an expert on water management around 5 different topics. The interactive map is already introduced, and some of the stakeholders from the that were interviewed in Jordan were already there for a bit of advanced videos. But in the second part, they got a challenge. They had to solve one of the problems, and that's where they could explore the map and revisit that challenge or revise the challenge and actually get to learn the context. This is a bit of an overview of the process. So this was part of a larger fund. It was a course redesign, already started in 2021, a serve innovation proposal, and there were 5 missions planned. And I think in November 22, so that was the last mission was the actual shooting mission, and that's when the media team actually got involved on location. We were involved in the discussions before, but we hadn't seen all the spots before we went there. We didn't even know where we could shoot something. So that brought kind of its own challenges. One of Alex's biggest things is how to sustain this living lab, because now he's made contact with those people, and one of the things he wants to do is make this sustainable. So he needs to stay in touch with those people. And how did he do that? So there are different layers in this map, but I will show you a little bit more when I talk a bit about the role of media in this virtual tour. At some point, Alex comes to the educational media team. We've worked with him before, and now he said, hey, I have a nice large project. I want to shoot videos in Jordan. But actually, he was asking way more than that, because he wanted to have that case study. It was not a typical project, because he wanted to achieve the active engagement from an actual field trip. And just having those videos was not enough. He didn't want to go XR or VR. So 2 typical scenarios that I have as instructional designer when somebody says, hey, I want to have that engagement and an active field trip connection, I would either go for the immersive experience, where you actually go in and see what's happening, or have some bit of a guided quest. So I, as instructional designer, have control of what students do and don't do. But one of the first things Alex said to me was, no, I don't want to go VR. That's too much hassle with the investments. He's seen too many projects fail because of the huge investment, and he wanted to have some kind of control of what happens, and made him feel become less real. So he said, no XR, and I don't want this guided. Those students need to explore that real life situation. That's what needed to be mimicked. So no guidance, which gives it a bit of a challenge, because when we shoot video, we want to have scripts. We want to have a learning objective, and preferably a teacher in a safe environment of the studio explaining step by step what needed to be done. So this was totally different from what we were used to. So we also, as a team, had to discover a new structure, because how do you go about creating media without a script, without a goal, without a distant expert? But Alex did have a clear design idea. He wanted to have challenges solved. So we did know there was supposed to be one map. We did know there were 3 layers, because he wanted to talk about the infrastructure. He wanted to talk about 7 different stakeholders. He didn't know who they were, but they know their profile. We needed a farmer in the north, a farmer in the south, and we needed somebody from governance. So he had identified 7 stakeholders, and they all have to. That was the most detailed one. The 3 layers were the key infrastructure, the challenges itself, and those 7 people. So that's what we could build upon. So before we went to Jordan, we know that we had to find 7 people to be interviewed with those specific profiles, and we know the different types of videos that needed to be made. We also knew that we should provide context. That's where we show the infrastructure in the different videos. We had local interviews to get to know the problem owner, and those challenges should provide the focus. And for video, our people really like to think in the what, who, and where. And if you combine this with that interactive map, we always have a where, because it's always placed within a map. We always have a who, because there is one of those experts, one of those local stakeholders talking, and the what is something we had to define together with the teacher. This reminds me a bit, because in this project, pre-production was a bit of a challenge. Alex saying, no, we don't have scripts, we don't have anything. And Remco, our media specialist, saying, no, I need to know what to shoot. I remember Matt saying in his project, it's about trust. If I go with this teacher, I know he delivers what needs to be delivered. In this project, it was way longer, so you need to start building that trust. And I think one of the great things that Remco described while joining the teacher team was, it's about going with the flow. It's one of the things Alex gave back as well. He was afraid that hiring a camera person would mean that suddenly they have to restrict themselves. But one of the great things that Remco did was go with the flow, shoot what you can, and build upon that plan that we have. 7 interviews, as much as the context as possible. And I want to go into a few project snippets. So this is the map that we eventually built. At the start of this project, it was just about video. One of the main lessons learned for me was start thinking about how you want to publish this. Because there were so many different teams involved, a lot of us assumed that somebody else would take care of the map. We had a teaching assistant, we had a H5P, that's the tool we used to build this. We had an H5T department. So probably some of them would pick this up. And as we progressed, I started to see videos of really high quality. And I asked the teaching assistant, so how are you going to publish this in the course? Yeah, maybe some of them will be in the map, some of them just in a playlist. And that was the point where we said, no, we went to Jordan. We spent a lot of time in creating great videos, high quality videos. There needs to be a conveying story. Even though we can't have a guided scene, we need to find the structure. So that's where I tried to step in, help Ayub, and together with Ayub, get a much better idea of what Alex actually wanted to convey. He was not against giving information, giving context. He just didn't want to say, student, click here. That's perfectly manageable. So we had those 3 layers. We have the meet the people. I hope you can see do you see my mouse moving around on screen? In the right bottom corner, meet the people in Jordan. If you go there, you have an overview of the different people, divided into the farmers and the governance people. in all the different regions, you can discover the key infrastructure. So there's a water pump. There is a you can explore what does the south differ from the north, and we had Ayub explain this in a lecture up front. And the third thing you can see is the challenges. So those challenges were always connected to the people, so they are located at that thing. So we offered some help to Ayub, to Alex, in making sure that we could structure this into the map. In my next slide, I'm going a bit back and forth now. So this is a list of all the materials that we shot. So Remco was by himself when he went on location, and he realized we're not following one way to go from north to south, which was the initial idea, that we would go interview different people. When you go on location, plans change. So he quickly realized I need to attach locations, GPS data, and as soon as I get home, I need to make sure that I metadata all my materials. He knew he could only go there once, so he shot a lot of extra materials. I think here at the top, there's a number hidden there somewhere, 430 different assets, all kinds of materials that he shot. And by then we didn't have a plan, but we did have a lot of teachers who had an idea of what they needed. They were those content experts, right? So we had 5 different teachers, each with their own module, but that needed to be combined in this map implicitly, but they all had their own expertise. So some about groundwater, some about the governance aspect of things. So Remco made sure that he metadated everything, and that the teachers who joined on the mission were always in conversation with each other. Hey, you need a video like this? No, we don't have that material, but you could use something we shot on a different location. And this Excel sheet was a great help in this, which again was then communicated to our editors, who could combine this into a bit of knowledge-like clips. This was this was our process overview. So I stepped in right at the moment when Remco was in Jordan. That's when I joined this team. So I wasn't there for the whole pre-production process. So one of the first things Remco said, we missed that pedagogical view so far. So we've been trying to do as good as we can in pre-production. And it took me a while to figure out what are those different layers. And that's what we got when we finally discussed with the teachers, hey, which videos do we group? How many videos are we actually going to produce? They talked about 40 in the beginning. Eventually we made 23, some in the modules. And let me get my mouse. And this is where we have the videos for the key infrastructure, the interview materials. So those are the 7 stakeholders with their names, because now they could finally get a face. These are the portrait videos, and these are the interviews about the different challenges connected to those people. And here we followed everything with, hey, because it was not just one person doing the post-production, we also had to learn how to do this as a team, because there were so many videos right in between the other normal work that we do, we had to divide and conquer. So some were dedicated on this project, but we had to help each other out. So we had to make sure that we know whether the comments already had been made, whether the rough cut was done, whether it was already final cut. One of the tools that we used to make sure we align, this is what we used to get a feedback. This is Frame.io. I think we use different device now, but what's great is that you can immediately see, hey, we have the first version. Where do we need to make changes? Because we made a lot of interpretation on what we think this video told. So this was a great way to quickly revise and change what was needed. I have some last slides of the product itself, but then we would go much more in depth. So I think I want to open the floor for any questions, because this is what I wanted to show.
Okay, Pim, thank you very much. Very impressive indeed as well. I see the big difference between you and Matt's case is that, well, Matt is dealing with, if you want to, dead material, pardon me the word, while you are trying to deal with making a virtual field trip by kind of virtually meeting people as if you are going to ask any question possibly to this person and try to create like a virtual experience in that way. So that's a completely different challenge. Can you
Yeah,
remind
it's not to add a bit to that, Matty. So looking at those interviews of those people, it's not about the student asking questions to those people, right? It's really about Alex asked questions to those people to really make sure that they knew their context. So we shot them at their own farm and so indeed that's something different because it's not a teacher telling them what to do.
So you have to try, as a creator of a virtual field trip, you have to try to understand what these people may be telling us, being of interest and importance to your students, what they want to learn, in fact, from that person. So, which is a completely different way of conceiving a virtual field trip. So when I saw that the calendar, the timeline, it was a very long period. But altogether, what were the resources? How many people were working on this? How much time did you really spend in production? Can you disclose a little bit about how much it cost in time or money to make something like this?
Too much?
Yeah.
No, I think we have a team of at least 4 people just on post-production for this. I think we had a period of 2 or 3 months when we really had to do that focused post-production. And then I'm not talking about shooting itself and all the additional work of people. So yeah, we spend a lot of resources also to see what could we do with this type of project. So yeah, 3 months with at least 4 people working at least 2 or 3 days on editing. Different.
So there's a couple of hundreds of person days work on it. 200?
Could be. We never made the calculations also.
Yeah. It's a luxury to be able to produce that. How was the reaction of your academic or content responsible? Are they happy to try and do such an adventure again?
Yes, as soon as we delivered this, Alex was already talking about, hey, let's do the next one. So if we do this again, we would take a different approach, right? It would not take this many hours. We would now know what to build upon because you learn. So pre-production, we were really long stuck on, hey, we need those scripts, we need those things. Well, we didn't really know what the outcome would be. So knowing what you want at the end and take that as a guiding point and listening to the teacher and, hey, I have this idea of different layers in my head, can also really help in pre-production. And that would save a lot of time in not shooting 430 assets, but just shooting the assets that you need. And that can already bring way more focus and bring down that post-production time a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine that just selecting the right items in post-production is also the incredible.
But to answer your question, Alex and the content expert were really impressed with what was delivered. Students as well, by the way. I remember the students saying, we spent way more time on this course than was supposed to be. And it was not a bad thing because they got so invested also because of the redesign that Alex already did in his course and this virtual map by actually feeling connected to the people in Jordan that make them motivated on some level.
Yeah. So talking about the students, where was the learning effectiveness evaluated in some way? What did the students learn better? What did your academic experts say about that?
So the difficulty about measuring the learning outcomes, this was really a design project. So it's a qualitative thing. What Alex mentioned is by introducing this map, he could see people exploring more and different ideas. He mentioned that as a learning outcome. Whether they had better results or better understanding, we aim so. But this is also something that you would supposed to be measuring over time because the aim was get them ready for the field work. They all mentioned, yes, I'm now ready for the field work. Possibly more than in previous years, but we don't have any numbers on it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have no further questions, but I'm sure that if there are any further questions, we'll see them appearing in the chat. And if that's okay with you, Pim, then I would like to introduce our last but not least speaker, Dr. Trevor Collins, Senior Research Fellow in Technology Enhanced Learning at the Open University Knowledge Media Institute and Director of Open STEM Labs. His research focuses on developing the use of technologies to support practical and practice-based learning at a distance. The Open STEM Labs are a collection of 6 subject-based laboratories that enable distance learning students to actively participate in practical learning activities through remote experiments, interactive screen experiments, and live interactive webcasts. And his virtual field trip case is, or this presentation is going, if you want to, one step further in complexity or in immersiveness, if you want to, because if I'm right, we are going to learn about live virtual field trips. So you do it when you're on the spot. Trevor, please, you have the floor.
Great, thank you very much. Just check that I can be heard okay. Is that coming through?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, wonderful. And the slides are appearing okay. Just give us a thumbs up if they're showing as they should. Brilliant, because I've got 2 screens and it's 50-50 chance as to which one you get. So that's great. So folks, I've got a few slides to go through, and this is a piece of work that I've been doing. I'm based at the Open University, as Matthew kindly introduced me. I'm a senior research fellow there. I've been looking at fieldwork education for quite a while, particularly within the Open University, where we're a distance learning university. So we do have quite a lot of students. There are about 200,000 students across all of the OU. I don't work with all of them, just with the STEM students specifically. The nature of distance learning is that we do plan our materials in advance, and we do put a fair bit of production into them, and then present them over a number of years. So it's just to give a wee bit of context for there. The assumption sometimes is that distance learning universities can't do practical field work in the same way as other institutions can, and that's just not true. And actually, we do the same kind of field courses as everyone else does, but we also use some digital methods as well. So it's those that I'm going to focus on. Some of the examples that I'll talk about today are drawn originally from my work with the OU, but I've also used these in other university contexts as well. So I'll draw on a couple of different examples as we go through. But a lot of this stuff is, because I've been doing it for a little while, I'll probably try to give a good cover of a range of things, and then it'd be great if there are particular things that people are interested in. You can always drop me a line. There's an email address there, and get in touch if there's particular things that people are interested in. When I spoke to Matthew and Dovile around this, they were saying that the group of people that come along to this, some of these are interested in the educational side and the technology side. So I'll try to cover bits of both. And to be honest, that's my interest as well. That's kind of why I do this work. So it'll be hopefully a useful conversation. So a little bit of this is around flexible field work. The things that I'm going to cover, then let me just get the slide to click through. Here we go. So I'll say a little bit of a background to this. I would mention the Open University, where I've got a project called the Enabling Remote Activity Project. I'll give a little bit of an overview of that. But it's specifically the way in which we use technology to facilitate access for students with disabilities and how they participate in our field courses. So that's kind of where this work comes from, where it originated. Building on that, then we started to do broadcasts from laboratories at the Open University as a way to introduce students to practical lab work across the STEM subjects. So that's the kind of the background to the live fieldwork stuff, which we do more recently. So that'll be the background piece. This flexible fieldwork approach, there's 2 ways that we've done that. At the Open University, we use fieldcasts, but working with some colleagues at in America, at the University of Florida and a few other places, we've been looking at using those kind of technology to do hybrid field courses where we have some students that are with us on a field course, but also some students that are joining us from their homes or from other places online, and sort of designing and developing that hybrid approach is something that I've been involved in for a little while. And I find that quite interesting because, again, it enables people to participate in field work that perhaps wouldn't get the opportunity to otherwise. So that's the main bit of the body of the talk. The last little couple of items will be those technology options, the plumbing, how we make it happen, and then teaching strategies. What are the teaching approaches that people use? Okay, so that's what I'll try to cover. Should get through that all in time. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat. The nature of these things, I may not be able to respond to things straight away, but hopefully do put in questions, and there is a bit of time afterwards as well. We'll go through things as we go. Okay, so. And I give a little credit here to my colleague, Yesenia Ario is in the image there with me. And that's the kind of setup that we've been doing for these hybrid field courses where we've got a camera a laptop that helps us stream out onto the internet, and we use sort of satellite links or mobile phone links and stuff like that. So that's the little bit of a context setter. Okay, so let's click through then into the next piece. So the background for this, where it all came from. The idea is, and I started doing this from about 2006, so it's been going quite a long time, where we had students at the Open University that are mobility impaired, that, you know, they're still doing our field courses, but they can't always get out into the field in the same way as everyone else. So what do we do for that? So we developed an approach where we could set up a local wireless network. So the Wi-Fi network that you've got at home, same kind of thing, but we try and use an outdoor version of that with a battery pack on it so that we can power it in the field. And that gives us a practical way to take out a sort of portable communications toolkit that lets us, you know, connect up people in the field site. So the students that maybe can't get to every location, they get to all the places that they can get to. And then we set up this equipment, and we're able to, some of the people that are in the field, they maybe have a little camera there. A couple of the academics here, they've got a little voice over IP telephone call going that they're able to link to the nearby student as well, that you see in some of the images there. And we've used that, we developed that over about an 8-year period, and we used it across courses for geology and also for environmental science. You know, it wasn't the case that there weren't always students every week that needed these things, but they were part of usually a 1-week residential course was the context that we used. That we were visiting multiple sites during the day. So the portable nature of it was very important. We had to be able to move through the sites as we were doing it. We used to refer to this as a network in a bag, because basically you had to put the stuff in the bag that you needed for the day, take it with you, fire it out and work away with it. So we would use a laptop that we could run the software on that we needed. So things like a web server and voice over IP, the sort of telephone service, those would be run on a laptop. The little battery powered Wi-Fi routers would give us the local connections, and then we could share photos. At the time, you could have cameras started to have those little FTP facilities on them where they could connect to a Wi-Fi thing. It's pretty standard now on all phones, but that's been around for a little while. So it was a good way in the field for doing field sketches and things like that. We could get a really nice, still, clean image and share that with the students instantly, so they could do the same kind of sketch work as everyone else. The video stream was something we developed over time, and some of the technology for that improved during the course of it. So currently we're using a standard called NDI, but we originally started with some of the real-time streaming protocol stuff as some of the standards for that. And then the last bit there, the phone calls. We used Asterisk initially, and then more recently the Jitsi service is just easier to set up and install and stuff. So if people are interested in the technical details, it's the kind of stuff that I can follow up with afterwards. The last piece to say there, though, although we've been developing that over quite a while, there's another group called the International Association for Geoscience Diversity. And they're based in America. That group that I mentioned, the leader for it is at the University of Florida, Anita Marshall. And they sort of replicated the equipment as part of a project that they had. And they've been using that for a few field courses and things across America as well. So universities in the US and Canada can work with that group to access some of this stuff. So that's worth a mention just as a context piece. But the idea with the ERA was really just enabling remote access, giving students, getting them out into the field the same as everyone else. But it was very much just a local piece. It wasn't going over the internet at that stage. The internet story then started building on that kind of knowledge. We thought about lab work at the Open University where I'm based. Some of our students, we used to send out home experiment kits and things like that, but they're a nightmare. We've got different ways to get students to do practical work now. But one of the ways that we extended that was to demonstrate things from our teaching labs. So we created this system where we could do a live video broadcast, which in the video would appear up at the top left-hand corner of the screen image for the students. And underneath it, there would be a little menu of widgets, little interactive question and answer widgets that the presenters would have pre-populated in advance. So there would be certain decision points that they would want the response of the students to determine what they would do next. And that justifies making it live. If there's no dependency on the student's action, then there's no reason for making it live. So that's really why that's so important to us. Now, the video is important, needs to be really good resolution, so we can't do this with the video conference. The quality of the video just isn't good enough. We really do need the detail of kinds of things. So this is an example of one of these widgets, and we ask students to click on the map and let us know whereabouts they're currently joining us from. It's the kind of standard thing you might do in an online thing to get people responding. And with this, as each person clicks on the map, their dot appears. And the nice thing for everyone is that the map just populates, you know, as people are coming into the session. Very dynamic, very responsive. So each response from the web browser is, you know, brought back to the server and then sent out again so that everybody's updated. It's a little push technology approach. The nice thing with doing that at the beginning of a session is that the students have worked out all the interface tools that they need for the whole session, because they're able to do these interactives with a very low stakes thing. And then all of the other subsequent questions are things that are asking them about, you know, making decisions through the session. So we started doing those in about 2014. It's part of the Open STEM Labs, which is the way that we do the practical work at the OU. There's about 30 events done each year, and there's a team that helps support that. There's a few people involved. Actually, 2 key people, I should say, because people have been asking about the scale of these things. So yeah, you can see here, this is sort of the teaching labs that we use. There's a couple of cameras in some of these images that you can see, the presenters and stuff, often using microscope equipment and things like that. We're often bringing in the video from people's computers as well as from the cameras and mixing things dynamically. So you can see my colleague Ben Hockridge there in the bottom right-hand corner. He's doing the video mixing for one of the field casts that we've done. So that's the Stadium Live bit. We started doing that with fieldwork in 2014 and then transitioned through to the fieldcast piece, which is a field broadcast effectively. So let me just click. So this is an example for that. So I'll say a little bit about this and then we'll move on through to the other places where we've been using this. So we've been doing these nearly, 9 years or so now, or 8 years, since 2016. My colleagues in the environmental science course, second level environmental science course, we use this as a way to introduce students to field work. So they often go on a field course a little bit later in the course. Some of them do a virtual alternative because they're not able to join us for a residential course, but everyone does the field cast. And they've got an assignment based on it as well. So the academics effectively are there people in the field. The students are online. The last one of these that we did, there was about 400 students that joined us live. There's about 800 students on the module. But because it's attached to the assignment, they all have to engage with it in order to write up the report. So the students are effectively making the decisions, or at least contributing to making the decisions that the academics are doing in the field. So there's 3 30-minute episodes. In the first one, we sort of set up the hypothesis and do a bit of the design. And the second one is primarily working through the design for the data collection, and then the academics will collect the data, and the third episode is analyzing the data and interpreting the results. But at each point, the idea with this is that the students are making decisions. So you can see there on the slide I've mentioned sort of in episode 1, the lecturers introduce the students to the field site. Students then identify items of interest, and to do that, they just type into a little word cloud kind of image. You know, they put a few keywords in there of things they're interested in, and the most frequent thing appears the biggest. And the academics then use that as a way to, you know, shape the conversation. And they ask the students if they're interested to develop a hypothesis. Are they interested in relationships between these things, or do they think there'd be a difference across the area that they're looking at? So it's a scaffolded way of building up a hypothesis. And the academic can then draft a few hypotheses and they ask the students to vote on it. So they'll, on the hoof, they have to come up with 3 hypotheses based on what the students have picked. And that's often quite challenging. And then the students can choose A, B, or C. And it's fairly low tech, that side of it. We've got a little whiteboard. The academics will write stuff on it as they need to, and they can bring that up in front of the camera. But that means that the question and answer widget can just be option A, B, or C, and we can reuse that lots and make it very flexible. We don't have to tailor it in advance. I'll try and just quickly show you a couple of little pieces of this video just as a way to illustrate it. Keep an eye on the time as well. No, we're done. Okay, but I'll just give you a sense of this, and hopefully you'll hear it, but maybe not too loudly. So this was taken a few years ago now, but you'll still get a sense of the same thing.
Good afternoon and welcome to the S206 SXF206 Fieldcast. We're delighted that you can join us today. Hopefully you're comfortable and warm. We're warm.
So the academics here stood at the field site. It was a really bad, wet day, the kind of day that everybody involved in field work is familiar with, but it's not the favorite day. They introduce themselves, talk a little bit about the site, and then we ask, I think there's that map widget appears as well. So you can see this is that kind of thing about students filling in.
So I also wanted to acknowledge that this is taking place during a time of some industrial action.
Oh yeah.
And if
a little bit. The nice thing with doing these things live is they get the connection with the students. So they set the thing up. There's a section of this where they use a little drone footage. One of the years we had the drone folks live because it was a good day, but then we reused the footage quite often. It's a nice way of giving the students an overview of the field site. For this particular area, I just pause that. They're interested in two areas, one with evergreen trees and one with trees that lose their leaves. And the students then have to kind of think about what are the environmental contexts of the two and design a study around that. You can see there on the floor, they've got some examples of different sampling strategies as well that they use as a way to get students to think about these things. But the idea with the video is the broadcast is live, they're sending that out. The students are asked questions, pre-prepared questions, and they need to make some decisions. But the things that the academics are doing in the field is dependent on what the students say effectively. And that's really the principle for it. So we're trying to make it live. The resolution, the quality of the video, we do it as a broadcast rather than a Zoom call because the video resolution and quality does need to be pretty good actually for it to work well, especially when there's detailed pieces. Let me see if I can click through this a little bit. I'll show you some of the detail shots here. This is a bit of the nightmare in terms of technical process. You can see, folks.
A bit of it that I've already just
They move in and out of this. They never stay still as soon as you settle on something. But we need to be able to get in pretty close to see what they're doing. Didn't mean to mute that.
I didn't pick a very good one there, but this is some ground ivy we can see in places. Different genus from the ivy that's growing up. The trunk's one that you're more familiar with.
Hopefully you get the sense there, folks. So we're going from big scale to very detailed scale and very much responsive. The academics, as you can see there with the flip chart, they've got their own notes. They've got a running sheet that says whose turn it is to do each piece, and the things rehearsed in advance, but actually the content's dynamic. And they've got little iPads so that they can see the response to the widgets. So that's the context. So that's the field cast piece. Hopefully that's a bit clear. We can pick up on that as well. But you can see there, in terms of access, folks are joining online. They're all participating in the same way, hopefully, pretty much. But we do add things like the closed captions and transcripts and things that we're able to process and tighten up afterwards. But we're trying to make this as accessible and as easy for people to participate in as possible. Some of the feedback that we've had on this, we've done various evaluation things with this. The students are very much appreciative of the opportunity to think about this, and they're less anxious when they're going into the field course, partly because they've been on a field course, they know what they're doing, and partly because they've met the academics as well, which for us is a big thing because they don't get that much of an opportunity to meet the academics. One of the reasons why we do these interactive broadcasts live is that it gives the academics a bit of a personality, which they don't always get for our teaching materials. So let me click on and move through to this last one, the hybrid field course piece. With this, so this was the project that I've been doing the last few years with that International Association for Geoscience Diversity. They've had a geospace project, and there's a link there through to it as well, which I'm sure will go into the chat. This is a group of people that have been interested in access and inclusion for fieldwork particularly. They're geologists, actually interested in volcanoes and planetary stuff, so interested in moons and Mars and all these other amazing places. And we use this kind of technology that I've been showing you, but we do it in a way that enables people to participate in a 2-week accessible field course in Arizona. So we go through sort of Flagstaff area of northern Arizona. There's quite a lot of volcanoes and stuff in that area. It's part of the San Francisco volcanic field. And there'll be a group of students online, probably quite a few more of those students in person. And there's about, I should have put in the staff as well. There's about 4 academics, and then there's 2 or 3 of us involved in supporting on the technical side as well. So it's not a huge team. It's kind of fairly standard fieldwork kind of size, I guess, in terms of a couple of minibuses and things like that. But the students that are participating, as I mentioned, it's the planetary science course. So they're mad about space. So the folks that are with us in person, they effectively are the astronaut team. So they go out and collect data in the field. And the folks that are joining us online, they're the mission control team. And we pretty much set that up for the course. And it just means that everybody's got a purposeful role. And we mix it up in different tasks and activities. The first few activities are getting people to know each other. Middle part of it is developing skills with some of the technology. And the last part, they're doing a set of research project for themselves as well. Often working in teams and moving between teams as well to facilitate that. One of the things that we're trying to, that is actually quite important for this, is that we're not selecting people by ability or location. We're mixing them up in a way that makes sure that everyone participates in the way they can. So that's the piece that we're using there. With this one, we don't have the question and answer widgets. We're using a whole range of things. We're using the video broadcast, as I sort of showed you the example before. We use YouTube Live for that. And there's an application called OBS Studio, which is, those are all free, so it's very easy to pick up some of these things. And they work fairly well for most locations. So that's that little piece. With this, because we're working with people in real time, but also asynchronously, because the people at home sometimes are with us live and sometimes it's a asynchronous piece, we need to use a mix of technologies. And I'll say a little bit about that as well before we, in fact, I think that's the next bit, is the technology piece. So these are the tools, and they'll go across these sets a little bit, and then there's a wee bit of time for questions as well. I'll say a bit about the teaching method. So the first of the tools that's kind of important for this kind of work and what we've been doing is getting people connected. So your various options for networks, you can be local, which we were for the enabling remote activity stuff, where it's just within a field site. But you can also do internet either through 4G or 5G mobile phone signals where you can get that. And the early work that we did, we couldn't get that. That's why they were always local. But the more recently, we've been using mobile signals. And for the fieldcast work at the OU, we often use the mobile broadband network. But the one in America, the geospace stuff, we've been using Starlink for that for this last year. And the quality of that is so much better. It's definitely well worth, although I perhaps not a fan of the company, the technology is extremely good, and the data rate and reliability of it is incredible. So yeah, you have to kind of go with that. So that's, and value for money wise, actually, at the current option, the Starlink things are well worth looking at. If you do field work fairly often, it pretty much works from anywhere, and you can pay for it on a month-by-month basis. So you buy the kit and you only switch it on for the months that you go out, which is sort of fairly economical. But you can see here in the image, the satellite link is on the top of the car, and that gives us internet. And then there's a little Wi-Fi stand there just to the right of the car, and that's beaming up to the top of the crater that you can see at the top of the hill there. So the folks at the top are able to connect with the people at the bottom. That's the sort of the take-home message for how that works. The voice stuff, we can do that with two-way radios, little walkie-talkies. We've done that for a long time, but obviously that requires line of sight. Whereas the voice over IP telephone stuff, that once we go onto a network, we can either do that on a local network or even the internet will work for that as well. So that way we can do voice much more flexibly, and that's what we've been doing with some of these things. And then the video stuff, as you can see, the image there is coming in now. Hopefully it's not a great picture. I'm not going to pretend. The biggest issue we have often is the sun and seeing screens. But you can see this is the academic up at the top is introducing the crater and the rock kind of areas and stuff at the top there, linking up to people that are at the bottom. So for some of those things, we do use Zoom calls for some of the video conferences when we're bringing people together for a conversation, right? And the priority there is the voice, the quality of the voice, and the video isn't very good because you don't want any delays in the conversation, two-way conversation. Whereas using things like YouTube Live, it's web broadcast where they're sending the video out and we're prioritizing the video. And we actually add in a buffer so that the video is delayed about 20 seconds to maybe a minute. For doing some of those broadcast things, but it means that we can do amazingly good video, which is kind of worth it, to be honest. With that, we just need to orchestrate things. So for the fieldcast, when we ask students to answer a question, we then tell them something for about a minute and then come back to have a look at their answer. And that way, we've been doing it that way for a few years now. Nobody even notices. It's pretty seamless. As long as you orchestrate it, it seems to be pretty effective. The last little bit on the technology, and this is particularly for the hybrid courses. This is something that when we tried hybrid stuff before, it didn't work. And I think the reason that it's working now is that because we've been using this Discord system. So for having chat and photo sharing, Discord is one of these online platforms that gamers use quite a lot. But the cool thing about it is that it works on mobile phones as well as people's web browsers and things like that. So it's very easy to take out in the field. So the students are all over this. And it means that asynchronously, they can be taking pictures from the field and just uploading it when they've got a connection. And we use Discord on the hybrid course, and we have structured channels so that people are going to the right place for the right information. And if there is a delay or we need to announce something, we can get that information to everyone instantly. So that Discord thing, the asynchronous nature of that has been really, really helpful for it. So it is. I mean, the nature of these things, you're kind of borrowing a few different technologies that build on each other. But this idea of being able to have learning conversations in the field is so important. Seeing and talking together is I think the piece about fieldwork and fieldwork education that makes it a very rich experience. Okay, so that's the technology option. The last little bit then I'll summarize just to bring us through is the teaching strategies. So when we've been doing the remote access stuff, there have been 3 formats that we've developed over the years. The first one was Sherpa style, if you can think of the Everest expeditions. We would send a person with the equipment out into the field, and they would link back to the student and the tutor would facilitate the student's learning, make sure they get through it. And if the technology breaks, the tutor can teach them it anyway. Do you know what I mean? So there's a backup, and then you can see why that we started with that. As the technology got more and more reliable, the tutor would then be confident enough to go off into the field and link back to the nearby student. So we'd refer to that as a sort of remote tutor beaming in. And then more recently, as the students were getting more confident with it, the students themselves would work at either place as a group. And that was really, really good because for some students who, for mobility reasons or whatever, can't get to the field site, if the social dynamic is there and they're working together, it doesn't matter if they're the same place, as long as they're seeing the same thing and talking to one another, you know that you've kind of done it well. So that's more of the tutor as a guide on the side kind of model. For the broadcast stuff, it's those student-led investigations that we've been trying to do. It's not necessarily like every individual doing a different investigation. It is by the nature of it, a lot of people trying to vote on and shape something, but they've got skin in the game. They're involved and they're participating, which I think is the kind of key thing for a lot of this virtual fieldwork experience, is getting the students involved. And then the hybrid example of that is, as I said, it was a sort of mission control and astronaut model. It's such that the subject lends itself to that idea, that way of having people that need to plan a mission, to design, work out what questions we're going to find out when we do the field, and they will spend most of the day planning that, present it to the astronauts in the morning. They'll go out in the field and collect the information and come back and present it back. They need a debrief. So every day would start with a mission briefing and a debriefing. And that way you would get a nice closure on the kind of the conversations that they would be doing. There would be points during the day where we would have some live connections. Not everyone could make it, but the live things are always recorded, so they're easily available for people, as well as the Discord as being the backup as well. Okay, so that's me. I kind of covered quite a bit. In the nature of this, there's an awful lot to it, but there is a wee bit of time there for questions and things like that. I know the slides will go through afterwards. I put in here a couple of other papers and stuff, as well as a link to the other publications that have been done. But these are some of the places where the evaluations of this stuff has been put in. So that might be of interest to people as well. But I'll wrap up at that and hopefully there'll be a couple of questions as well.
Oh, thank you very much, Trevor. This is very impressive. So I'm amazed. Fantastic. Few questions are already there. Well, I would like to invite everybody to switch on their camera so you can take the floor also for cameras, and let's make it a little bit interactive. A couple of questions for you. First of all, Dominic Bates, if you want to, you can ask the question yourself if you like. Otherwise, I'll do it for you. He says, fascinating stuff that you're doing, Trevor. Would you say that the OU are the pioneers or set the standard for this kind of hybrid field trip? Or are there others that you've learned from to develop your approach?
Yeah, there's well, I should sorry, I was just moving the screen around there a little bit. I should say the OU are pioneers and fantastic and all the rest, and I've been at it for a while, but it's not entirely true. There's different groups that have been involved in some of this stuff. That group, the International Association for Geoscience Diversity, I linked up with them fairly early, and there's been a few people through that have done stuff. And as well, in different subjects, there's been some leads in this. But the live broadcast stuff, there's not lots of places that have done that, to be honest. But yeah, I'm very keen, if anybody's interested, to try and promote it and get more people to do it, because it is a wee bit of a cottage industry. It's a wee bit of a niche thing, but it does seem to work quite well for some of this stuff. So, but yeah, there's a few different places I've worked with it. We've done some work recently with, there's a colleague at Newcastle University where she's been taking students out into the field and getting them to do live broadcasts as a way to engage them in some of their placement activities and stuff like that. And that's kind of a really interesting use of it. So yeah, it's starting to appear, but yeah.
There's also the Center of Interactive Learning and Collaboration, where that's a bit of a repository where they have a little list of about 30, 40 different virtual field trips, live virtual field trips as well. How
Brilliant.
how comparable they are. I haven't went through all of them, but there's a few that are also inspiring.
Oh.
Then Matt is asking this. That was also a question that I had. Did I hear you say that you are like 2 people supporting this? How many people are working on this? Can you sketch a little bit how that works with the support?
Yeah. So for the remote access stuff, we had very little money, so it was me joining the team. So usually, if there was a student that needed the stuff, there would be one extra person. There's been a few other colleagues that have done it with us over the years, but usually on the field course, it would be one extra person to go out and look after the kit. And having one person dedicated to do this is a kind of a minimum, to be honest. It would be great if there was more. For some of the other stuff, the field broadcast, we need more than that. You need to have a mixer. You need to have somebody that can mix the video and do that attentively and live. And then you need an operator maybe for the cameras. So we would usually have 3 cameras and 2 of them would be mobile. So we would need 2 people to operate the mobile cameras. You can get away with less, but it's the number of cameras is the determined thing. You always want a static, safe camera that's not going to mess around or move that you can always switch to. But if they're moving about and you want some close-ups, you need an operator, to be honest with you. So on those field broadcasts, we have 2 camera operators, 1 video mixer, 1 producer. So there's kind of 4 behind the cameras. And then there's been 4 academics in front of the camera. There's 3 of them that are presenters. And to be honest, that's just because they're friends and they want to work together. You could do it with us. But there's the other person, the 4th person, is on the text chat and facilitating the conversation, because that really brings it out. That really enables people to be more responsive in that. And they can also then be the conduit between the presenters and the students to flag stuff up. On the geospace one, it's a small crew again. It's sort of me and the additional bit, but there's my colleague there, Yesenia, that does a lot of the stuff with us. You need somebody to point the camera, and it's great if somebody can hold the laptop at the same time. So two's is sort of good, but you could get away with 1. Yeah.
Next question, Dominic, you may want to ask this yourself while I invite other people, if they have a question, just to raise their hands. Dominic, you're asking about Starlink?
All good.
Thanks, Matty. I don't want to completely hog all the questions today. I realise I've had a few, but I was just trying to sort of make a comparison, and I get the point about the concerns about the company themselves, but presumably there's a parallel with the way that AWS works, in that you can spin up a web server instance for a limited period of time. You don't need a sort of ongoing subscription contract. So it's kind of like satellite on demand. Is that how it's working?
Well, the way they've done a few different models of the contracts. You buy the kit, which isn't horrendously expensive. It's, I can't remember the numbers, to be honest. But it's it's less than a mobile phone. It's a few £100 for the satellite dish thing. But then you can pay, depending on the version you can get. They'll set you up with the contracts that are designed for a static location. So if you've got a place that's not great internet, you go for the static one. But for the stuff that we do, you go for the roaming version. It's typically designed for people that have got mobile homes and they're moving from place to place. And that's good enough. You don't need to go crazy and do the one that's designed for, unless you're doing stuff out in the ocean, you don't have to go for the one that's designed for boats. The middle priced one is good enough. And if you get that, you can buy the contract, but then you pay each month that you use. So you can pause the contract. So, you do pay monthly, and it's something like $70 or something for a month. But it's the big scheme of things. If you're doing like a field course like this and it's giving you safety, it's kind of worth it. So yeah, you pay it per month. But yeah, the way that we've used that, we've just got the contract, but we only pay for 1 month a year. It's fine.
And what kind of bandwidth are you talking about, up and
Oh
down?
yeah, sorry. I should have said that. Yeah. So the up, you'll get between 200 and 300 megabits a second, and down, down you'll get between 200 and 300 megabits a second. Up, you'll get between 20 and 30 megabits a second. And that, for the broadcast that we do, we send 2.5 megabits a second usually, and we wouldn't really be comfortable to run it on any less than 5 megabits a second, because you kind of need it varies a wee bit with bursts and stuff. So as long as you got 5, it's pretty reliable. But with the Starlink stuff, it's amazingly crystal clear. So we can go up to 60 frames a second with the Starlink stuff. And we could increase our resolution, but to be honest, we've been keeping it at, I think it's 720 or 1080 for the video. But it's really, really nice. Yeah.
Any other questions also for Matt or Pim, please? The floor is open.
Join us.
and if everybody's shy, I have another question for you, Trevor, if I may. So how do you do that? So there are, like you said, 800 students for that particular course, 400 are following live online, but how do you make that experience kind of digestible for the 400 that are not following live online?
So the recorded, so this is the nice thing with it being live is, and so it does take a wee bit of advance and rehearsal and stuff to make sure you do it right when you do the live thing. But because you've recorded it, that's available then for the students that weren't there. So when we were first doing it, we would just, switch between the cameras, and so we would be giving people what the people were seeing. But we quickly realized that if we also switched in the widgets, the responses on the widgets, that let everybody see what was being asked, of the students, but also showed them what was being answered. So that way, by mixing that into the video while we're doing it, it really helps close the conversation during the live thing, but it's absolutely essential for the recorded one. And it means that students can go through the recording and get the information from it that they need. The students get the data set and stuff. They're asked to write up a report from the investigation and stuff. That's kind of their practical thing, and gives them a bit of a practice at writing reports. So, yeah.
Okay,